The alarm sounds. Another day begins. But what separates the extraordinary from the ordinary isn't just what they do. It's what they tell themselves before they do anything at all. You see, most people never realize that the most important conversation they'll have today is the one they have with themselves before their feet ever touch the floor. That first internal dialogue sets the trajectory for everything that follows. I want to ask you something that might make you uncomfortable. When was the last time you deliberately chose your first thoughts of the day? When did you last consciously select the words that would shape your next 24 hours? Most never do. Most let circumstances, moods, or yesterday's problems dictate their mental direction. And then they wonder why they keep arriving at the same destination. The quality of your life isn't determined by what happens to you. It's determined by what happens in you. And what happens in you begins with what you tell yourself when the day is young and the possibilities are fresh. I learned this lesson the hard way. There was a time when my mornings were chaotic, reactive, not proactive. My mind would immediately race to problems, deadlines, worries. Before I'd even brushed my teeth, I'd lived through a dozen potential disasters in my head. Is it any wonder? I felt exhausted before noon. The change came when I realized something so simple, yet profound. I was letting my life be driven by default settings rather than deliberate choices. And the most powerful choice I could make was what to tell myself in those first critical moments of consciousness. Today I'm going to share with you the 5 statements that transform my mornings, my days, and ultimately, my life. These aren't just positive affirmations or empty phrases. They're commitments to yourself that fundamentally alter how you show up in the world. But first, I want to be clear about something. This isn't about ignoring reality or pretending challenges don't exist. It's quite the opposite. It's about preparing yourself mentally and emotionally to face reality with your full capacities engaged. It's about arming yourself with the perspective that empowers rather than diminishes. So let's talk about the first thing you should tell yourself every morning. And it may surprise you because it's not what most motivational speakers would suggest. I own this day. Not, I hope this day goes well. Not, I'll try to make this a good day. But I own this day. There's a world of difference between approaching your day as something that happens to you versus something that belongs to you. Ownership changes everything. When you own something, you treat it differently, don't you? You take care of it. You make decisions about it. You don't let others misuse it. You protect its value. A day is exactly 86,400 seconds. Rich or poor, young or old, we all get the same allocation. But some people squeeze extraordinary value from those seconds while others let them slip away. Have you ever noticed how some people seem perpetually victimized by time? I don't have enough time. Where did the day go? I'm always behind. These are the statements of someone who views time as their master rather than their resource. Let's contrast that with those who own their days. They don't have more time. They have more ownership. They make decisions about their time rather than letting circumstances decide for them. I remember speaking with a single mother of 3 who worked 2 jobs and was finishing her degree. When I asked her how she managed it all, she said something I'll never forget. Every morning, before my feet hit the floor, I remind myself that this day is mine. Not my boss's, not my kids', not my professors', mine. And I choose to share it with them from a place of strength, not surrender it from a place of obligation. That's ownership. And it begins the moment you wake up. Now, when you tell yourself, I own this day, several things happen. First, you position yourself psychologically as the decision maker rather than the decision taker. Second, you create a mental framework of responsibility. This day's outcomes are primarily your creation. And third, you establish an expectation of intentionality. Owners don't waste what's valuable to them. But ownership isn't just about control. It's about stewardship. It's recognizing that each day is both a gift and an investment. How you use today determines the returns you'll receive tomorrow. I want you to try something. Tomorrow morning, the moment you become conscious, before checking your phone or turning on the news or even speaking to another person, declare silently but firmly, I own this day. Feel what happens in your body when you make that declaration. Notice how your posture might change, how your breathing might deepen, how your mind might sharpen. That's not positive thinking. That's positioning. You're positioning yourself at the cause, not the effect of what happens next. Of course, saying you own the day is just the beginning. Ownership requires action. It means making deliberate choices about your time, your focus, your energy, and your responses. It means recognizing that between stimulus and response lies a space. In that space is your power to choose. And in your choice lies your growth and your freedom. When someone cuts you off in traffic, you own your response. When a project fails, you own your learning. When an opportunity appears, you own your decision to seize it or let it pass. This kind of ownership isn't easy, It demands that you stop blaming circumstances, other people, bad luck, or timing for your situation. It requires you to look in the mirror and say, this is my life, my day, my moment. But here's what happens when you truly embrace this first morning declaration. You stop being a passenger in your own life and slide behind the wheel. You stop waiting for perfect conditions and start creating your own weather. You stop hoping things will get better and start making them better. The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people isn't talent, resources, or luck. It's ownership. Successful people own their days, their decisions, their mistakes, and their growth. Unsuccessful people rent their lives from circumstances. So tomorrow morning, before anything else, tell yourself, I own this day. Then live like you mean it. I embrace the discomfort of growth. The second thing you must tell yourself every morning is perhaps the most challenging. I embrace the discomfort of growth. Let's be honest about something. Growth is uncomfortable. Learning is uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable. If you're waiting to improve your life when it feels comfortable to do so, you'll be waiting forever. Most people misunderstand comfort. They think it's a condition to aspire to. But comfort is not your friend. It's the enemy of your potential. Look at nature. Nothing in nature grows in a zone of comfort. Seeds must crack open and push through soil. Birds must leave the nest. Snakes must shed their skin. The caterpillar must dissolve itself completely before becoming a butterfly. Yet somehow we humans have convinced ourselves that we can grow while remaining comfortable. We can't. And deep down, we know this. Think about anything meaningful you've ever accomplished. Did it happen within your comfort zone? Or did it require you to stretch, to risk, to feel that knot of uncertainty in your stomach? The gym provides the perfect metaphors. When muscle growth occurs when muscle fibers are stressed to the point of microscopic damage, then repair themselves stronger than before. No stress, no growth. The same principle applies to every aspect of your development. When you tell yourself each morning, I embrace the discomfort of growth, you're making a profound psychological shift. You're reframing discomfort from something to avoid to something to welcome, because it signals you're expanding. A client once told me that every morning he would look in the mirror and ask himself, what's going to make me uncomfortable today? Not because he was a masochist, but because he understood that on the other side of that discomfort was the person he wanted to become. This declaration, I embrace the discomfort of growth, changes how you approach your day in fundamental ways. When that alarm goes off and the warm bed feels so inviting, you recognize the discomfort of rising early as the pathway to productivity, not an affliction to avoid. When your mind balks at tackling the most challenging project on your list, you see that resistance as a compass pointing towards your most important work. When the conversation you need to have with a colleague, a spouse, or a child feels daunting, you understand that meaningful relationships require the discomfort of honesty and vulnerability. Now, embracing discomfort doesn't mean seeking suffering for its own sake. It means recognizing that temporary discomfort in service of your growth is not just acceptable. It's essential. Too many lives are diminished by the avoidance of necessary discomfort. How many crucial conversations never happen? How many dreams die in the gap between intention and action because that gap is filled with discomfort? I've met people who've stayed in jobs they hate for decades because the discomfort of change felt greater than the discomfort of stagnation. I've known others who've remained in unhealthy relationships because the familiarity of dysfunction felt safer than the uncertainty of starting over. The tragedy isn't just that they suffered, it's that they suffered without purpose or progress. Comfort can be a cage we build around ourselves, bar by bar, day by day, choice by choice. Before long, the cage feels like protection when it's actually limitation. What could your life become if every morning you reminded yourself that growth and comfort cannot coexist? What might you attempt? What risks might you take? What changes might you make? I'm reminded of a woman who attended one of my seminars. She was in her 60s and had just started a technology company, an industry where she had no experience and where she was often the oldest person in the room by 3 decades. I asked her how she handled the steep learning curve and the inevitable mistakes. She smiled and said, every morning I look in the mirror and say, today will be uncomfortable, and that's how I know I'm still growing. Then I get to work. She understood something vital. The discomfort never disappears. You just develop a different relationship with it. You recognize it as the sensation of breaking boundaries, of becoming more than you were yesterday. So tomorrow morning, after you've declared your ownership of the day, tell yourself, I embrace the discomfort of growth. Then watch how that declaration transforms obstacles into opportunities. Because when you no longer fear discomfort, you become unstoppable. I focus on what I can control, The third declaration that must become part of your morning ritual addresses one of the greatest sources of frustration, anxiety, and wasted energy in our lives. It's simple but profound. I focus on what I can control. In this complex world, we are constantly bombarded with situations, news, and circumstances that affect us but lie completely outside our sphere of influence. The economy fluctuates. The weather changes. Other people make decisions we wouldn't make. Systems operate in ways we didn't design. And yet, how much of our mental and emotional energy do we invest in these uncontrollables? How often do we exhaust ourselves pushing against immovable walls? There's a fundamental law of effectiveness that too many ignore. Your impact is directly proportional to your focus on what you can actually influence. Think about a garden. A skilled gardener doesn't waste time worrying about last week's frost or tomorrow's temperature. They focus on what they can control. The quality of the soil, the spacing of the plants, the consistency of watering, the protection from... Your life is that garden. And each morning, you have a choice about where to direct your precious attention and energy. When you tell yourself, I focus on what I can control, you're establishing a filter for your day. You're declaring that you'll invest yourself where your investment can yield returns. This isn't about ignoring problems or being passive. It's about being strategic with your most valuable resources. Your attention, your energy, and your effort. I once worked with an executive who was nearly incapacitated by anxiety over market conditions that threatened his industry. Every morning he woke up checking the latest economic indicators, political developments, and competitor moves. By the time he reached his office, he was already mentally exhausted. And he hadn't yet done anything productive. I suggested a simple change to his morning routine. Before looking at any news or reports, he would take 5 minutes to write down what aspects of his business he could directly influence that day. Then he committed to focusing 8 of his energy on just those elements. The transformation was remarkable. Not only did his anxiety decrease, but his effectiveness increased. By concentrating his efforts where they could make a difference, he actually strengthened his company's position despite the challenging external environment. Now, focusing on what you can control requires honest self-assessment. We need to recognize the 3 concentric circles of our experience. The first circle contains what you can directly control. Your thoughts, your words, your actions, your responses, how you prepare, how you spend your time, what you learn, who you associate with. The second circle contains what you can influence but not control. How others respond to you, the culture of your team, the performance of people you mentor, the outcomes of projects you contribute to. The third circle contains what you can neither control nor influence. The weather, the economy, most world events, other people's opinions and choices, the past. Effectiveness and peace of mind come from focusing primarily on the first circle, secondarily on the second, and accepting rather than fighting against this morning declaration. I focus on what I can control becomes a compass that directs you toward productive action and away from unproductive worry. When a project isn't progressing as planned, it guides you to ask, what aspect of this can I directly impact today? When a relationship is strained, it prompts you to consider, what can I contribute to improving this situation? When circumstances seem overwhelming, it reminds you to identify the one small step within your power. I remember speaking with someone who had lost nearly everything in a natural disaster. I asked how she found the strength to rebuild. But she said, every morning, I would ask myself, what one thing can I control today? Some days it was just my attitude. Other days it was making one phone call or filling out one form. But focusing on that one controllable thing kept me moving forward when everything else felt chaotic. That's the power of this declaration. It doesn't deny difficulties. It distills them down to what's actionable. Now, some might misinterpret this principle as an excuse for not caring about larger issues or not working towards systemic change. But that's not what we're talking about. You can care deeply about things beyond your control while focusing your energy on your point of greatest leverage. In fact, the most effective change makers in history understood this principle well. They didn't waste energy railing against all that was wrong. They identified precisely where they could exert influence and concentrated their efforts there. So tomorrow morning, after declaring your ownership of the day and your embrace of growth's discomfort, tell yourself, I focus on what I can control. Then watch how your effectiveness multiplies as your frustration diminishes. Because when you stop pushing against walls that won't move, you find doors you never noticed before. I deliver value before I expect return. The fourth morning declaration speaks to a fundamental principle of success that goes against much of what our immediate gratification culture teaches. Every morning, you must tell yourself, I deliver value before I expect return. This principle is as old as civilization itself, yet remains revolutionary in its application. Most people have the equation backwards. They focus first on what they can get, then on what they can give. They wonder why opportunities seem limited, relationships remain shallow, and rewards come slowly, if at all. The secret to abundance in any area of life is to reverse this order. Give first, receive second. Now, I need to be clear about something. This isn't about martyrdom or being taken advantage of. It's about understanding a profound law of both human psychology and marketplace dynamics. Value precedes compensation. Think about it this way. In nature, the farmer must plant before harvesting. The effort comes before the reward, the input before the output. Yet so many approach their careers, relationships, and personal development with a harvest mentality before they've done any planning. When you tell yourself each morning, I deliver value before I expect return, you're programming your mind to seek opportunities to contribute rather than opportunities to gain. Ironically, this is the fastest path to gaining what you desire. There was a young professional who couldn't understand why he wasn't advancing in his career. When we examined his approach, the problem became clear. His primary focus was on his next promotion, raise, or recognition. His daily questions were, what will I get today? When will I be noticed? Why haven't they rewarded me? I suggested a simple but challenging shift. For the next 90 days, he would ask different questions. Where can I add unexpected value today? How can I make someone else's job easier? What problem can I solve that isn't even in my job description? The results were predictable to those who understand this principle. Within 6 months, he received the promotion he'd been seeking for 2 years. Why? Because he became the kind of person the organization couldn't afford to keep at his current level. This morning declaration transforms how you approach every interaction and opportunity. It shifts your focus from extraction to contribution. In your work, it means consistently delivering more than is required or expected. Not to be a doormat, but to be indispensable. In your relationships, it means considering what others need before stating what you want. Not as manipulation, but as genuine service. In your community, it means volunteering your time, talents, or resources without immediate benefit. Not as charity, but as investment. The paradox is that by focusing first on delivering value, you actually position yourself to receive greater returns than if you had focused on the returns themselves. This isn't just philosophical, it's practical. Think about the products, services, or people you value most. Don't they all share this characteristic of delivering value beyond expectation? Aren't they all givers before they are receivers? I remember speaking with the founder of a highly successful company about his business philosophy. He said something striking. We never talk about how to maximize profits. We talk obsessively about how to maximize value for our customers. The profits take care of themselves. This principle extends beyond business. The most respected people in any field, teachers, doctors, artists, leaders, all share this orientation toward giving value first. But here's a critical distinction. Delivering value first doesn't mean never receiving. It means understanding the proper sequence. Plant, then harvest. Contribute, then collect. Give, then receive. When you reverse this order, expecting to receive before delivering value, you create resistance, resentment, and closed doors. Think about how you react to someone who clearly wants something from you before they've offered anything of value. The salesperson who launches into their pitch without understanding your needs. The acquaintance who asks for favors without building relationship. The colleague who wants credit before completing their work. Now contrast that with how you respond to those who first seek to understand, to serve, to contribute. Your posture changes, doesn't it? You open rather than close. You engage rather than withdraw. That's the power of this fourth morning declaration. It positions you as a creator of value rather than merely a seeker of reward. And here's what's fascinating. When you consistently deliver value first, you rarely have to worry about the return. It tends to come back multiplied, because when you become known as someone who consistently gives value first, you never have to worry about what you'll receive. I am grateful for what is while working toward what could be. The fifth and final declaration you must make every morning speaks to one of the most delicate balances in human psychology. I am grateful for what is while working toward what could be. This statement addresses a paradox many struggle with. How do I remain thankful for my current circumstances while simultaneously striving to improve them? How do I avoid the twin traps of complacent satisfaction and chronic dissatisfaction? The answer lies in understanding that gratitude and ambition are not opposing forces. They're complementary powers that, when properly aligned, create a unique state of motivated contentment. Most people fall into one of two extremes. Either they're so focused on what's missing or what's next that they never appreciate what they have, or they're so accepting of their current situation that they lose the drive to grow and achieve. Neither extreme serves us well. Constant striving without gratitude leads to emptiness, achieving goals but never feeling fulfilled by them. Gratitude without aspiration leads to stagnation, appreciating where you are but never becoming what you could be. When you tell yourself, I am grateful for what is, while working toward what could be, you're establishing a psychological position of both appreciation and advancement. I remember working with an entrepreneur who was perpetually dissatisfied. No matter what milestone his company reached, he could only see how far they still had to go. His team was burning out from his constant pushing, and he himself was experiencing the hollow success of achievements that brought no joy. I challenged him to begin each morning by writing down 3 specific things he was grateful for about his business, exactly as it was, not as it would be someday, but as it existed that day. Then, from that place of appreciation, he would identify the most important areas for growth and improvement. The shift in both his leadership and his personal fulfillment was profound. By finding gratitude for the present while still working toward the future, he created a sustainable approach to progress. His team felt both appreciated for their current contributions and inspired toward greater possibilities. This principle applies across every dimension of life. In your personal development, it means valuing who you are today while becoming who you aspire to. In your relationships, it means appreciating people as they are, encouraging their highest potential. In your career, it means recognizing current accomplishments while pursuing greater impact. Gratitude without growth becomes complacency. Growth without gratitude becomes exhaustion. Together, they create sustainable success. There's a powerful psychological reason for this morning declaration. Research shows that gratitude activates the brain's reward pathways and reduces stress hormones, creating an optimal state for both well-being and performance. Meanwhile, having clear growth goals activates motivation and focus. When combined, you create a neurochemical environment ideally suited for both happiness and achievement. This balance isn't always easy to maintain. Our minds tend to fixate either on what's wrong and needs changing or on defending the status quo. The daily declaration is a way of consciously resetting this balance. I'm reminded of a conversation with a woman who had overcome extraordinary obstacles in her life. Despite childhood poverty, limited education, and early setbacks, she had created a life of meaning, contribution, and success. I asked her about her mindset through those challenges. She said, every morning, I would take a moment to be genuinely thankful for exactly where I was, even when where I was seemed terrible. I'd find something real to appreciate. Then I would look forward with determination, not desperation. Being grateful didn't mean I wanted to stay there. It just meant I wasn't fighting reality while trying to change it. That's wisdom. Fighting against what creates tension and resistance that actually makes positive change more difficult. Accepting what is while envisioning what could be creates flow and possibility. So each morning, after your first 4 declarations, tell yourself, I am grateful for what is while working toward what could be. Then identify specific aspects of your current reality to appreciate, alongside specific visions of what you're creating. Because the path to an extraordinary future begins with acknowledging the gift of your present. The power of your morning declarations. These 5 declarations, when made part of your daily morning ritual, have the power to fundamentally reshape your experience of life. They aren't magic spells or empty affirmations. They're positioning statements that place you in the optimal relationship with yourself, your circumstances, and your possibilities. Let's review them. I own this day. This positions you as the primary creative force in your life, not a victim of circumstances. I embrace the discomfort of growth. This reframes challenges as pathways rather than obstacles. I focus on what I can control. This directs your energy toward leverage points instead of limitations. I deliver value before I expect return. This establishes you as a creator of opportunity rather than merely a seeker of it. I am grateful for what is while working toward what could be. This balances appreciation with aspiration together. These declarations create a mindset of empowered progress, acknowledging reality while creating possibility. Now, there's something important to understand about these morning declarations. Their power comes not just from saying them, but from living them. They must move from your lips to your decisions, from words to actions. The gap between knowing and doing is where most potential remains unfulfilled. Many will hear these principles, nod in agreement, perhaps even write them down, and then continue living exactly as they did before. But you have the opportunity to be different, to be among those who don't just consume wisdom but apply it. who don't just hear good ideas but embody them. What might your life become if these 5 declarations guided not just your mornings but your moments? What might change in your work, your relationships, your health, your impact? The wonderful thing about personal transformation is that it doesn't require anyone else's permission or participation. It can begin with a decision, strengthen, practice, and compound through consistency. So tomorrow morning, when you first become conscious, before reaching for your phone or responding to any demand, give yourself the gift of these 5 declarations. Speak them to yourself with conviction. Feel their truth in your body. Imagine them shaping your coming hours. Then watch what happens. Not just tomorrow, but as days become weeks and weeks become months. Watch how these simple statements consistently begin to alter your decisions, your habits, your relationships, and ultimately your life. Because the extraordinary life you desire doesn't come from extraordinary circumstances. It comes from extraordinary thinking translated into ordinary days. And that translation begins first thing every morning.